Happy Labor Day. No? Whatever, just watch.
So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me.
Hi, I'm Tyler, and I'm here to let you know that Stand By Me is no perfect movie. So in Stand By Me, best friends Gordy, played by Will Wheaton, Chris, played by River Phoenix, Teddy, played by Corey Feldman, and Vern, played by Jerry O'Connell, set out to find the dead body of a young boy named Ray Brower in their hometown of Castle Rock in 1959, while a group of bullies led by a guy named Ace Merrill, played by Kiefer Sutherland, set out to do the exact same thing. Now, the honest truth is, I can't really think of a good way to explain why I think Stand By Me is one of my all-time favorite movies without giving away huge spoilers that I think add to what I think are the best elements of the film. So, from here on in, I'm just going to say, spoiler warning, if you have never seen Stand By Me, go watch it. It's great. And if you don't care about spoilers, okay, you're lost. But, okay, here we go. Stand By Me is a film that doesn't really rely so much on plot structure, but more on atmosphere, and especially the chemistry between the four main characters. Had the casting been average or mediocre, this could have been a typical teenage coming-of-age film. But thankfully, director Rob Reiner cast the four leads based mostly on how all these actors look, move, and sound just like the characters they're portraying. Will Wheaton has the body language that makes him come off as being shy and awkward, but also very caring and imaginative, which is who Gordy LaChance is. This can also be said for Corey Feldman, who is always very erratic, very loud, much like the wild, eccentric, and scarred character that he plays, Teddy Duchamp. As well as Jerry O'Connell, who is very unrecognizable and very funny as the insecure and unconfident Vern. And last but not least, River Phoenix gives one of his best performances of all time as Chris Chambers, the youngest in a family of drunks and criminals, and the very one who acts less like a drinker or a crook, and more like a supportive, if a little bit wisecracking best friend. Now, from the very beginning, Vern, being the youngest in his family, has absolutely no power in his house. His mom cleaned out his room and threw out a map that led to all the spare change that he had that was hidden underneath his house. And he never fights back in life, especially during the train scene where at first, rather than run as fast as to try to survive, he gives up halfway through because it's just too hard for him, and he just waits for the train to hit him. And it isn't until Gordy screams at him repeatedly that he finally gets up and outruns the train. He receives the most amount of hazing from his friends, especially when he constantly receives 2 for flinching from Teddy. And halfway through the movie, when Vern manages to make Teddy flinch, you would think that he was going to stand up for himself. But instead, Teddy gives him 2 anyways because he correctly guessed that Vern wasn't going to fight back. And at first, we would think the exact same thing. Which is why I always forget that the day afterwards, when Teddy launches a series of insults at Vern, Vern finally stands up for himself, he finally snaps, tackles Teddy and punches him repeatedly, and that's when he finally decides to take a stand for himself. Teddy, on the other hand, loves to imagine himself as a war hero, fighting on the beaches of Normandy just like his father did, and he makes a lot of decisions based on impulses and his own fantasies. And when he does try to dodge a train early on in the movie only for Chris to pull him out of the way, Teddy very stubbornly and falsely claims that he doesn't need anyone's help. However, Teddy is forever in denial of how his dad was institutionalized for putting Teddy's own ear to a stove and almost burning it off. And because he resorts to anger when he's confronted with these facts, especially during that really good scene involving Junkman Pressman, he refuses to talk about his own pain because he doesn't want to look weak in front of anyone, even though his friends want to help him out. And as the ending indicates, having been rejected by the army and spending a certain amount of time in jail, he's pretty much the only member of the group who completely fails and avoids to face his fears in the end. But why would you idolize and care for a man who abused you in such a horrible way? And I feel like the only reason he would is because, unlike his other friends, he was born and raised an only child. And with no older siblings to look up to and living only with your mother in a time period where, unfortunately, women weren't really looked as role models, unfortunately, he's just looking for someone to look up to, even if it is completely misguided. Now, the source of Gordy's rejection is very ironic in the fact that it does center around death itself. In events prior to the movie, his older brother Denny, played very well by John Cusack, was killed in a car accident. And because he was a varsity football player in high school, his parents paid way more attention to him than they did to Gordy. But Denny realized this, and he made it his absolute best to be as good of a big brother as he could be, whether it be reading Gordy's stories and providing feedback or giving him his lucky baseball cap. And not only does Gordy's mom give him the silent treatment all day, but his dad constantly asks him, oh, well, gee, why can't you have friends like Denny? Why can't you be good at sports like Denny? Even in a scene as simple as him going to get groceries, a shopkeeper walks up and asks him, well, gee, what are you going to do with your life? And he doesn't respond because he knows that he's just going to get a comparison. He feels as if he can't stand on his own merits because when he trusts his friends to give response on his writing, he feels great at first because they're reacting so positively, but then they don't like the ending and he starts to feel very depressed as if he can't stand on his own. And it isn't until they do find the body and they're arguing with Ace over who gets the credit that Gordy takes out Chris's dad's gun that they took from him and threatens Ace, no one else in the group, just Ace. And that's when Gordy really starts to become ready to face the future. And he's not afraid of the fact that Ace is never going to forget this and that there may be retaliation. He doesn't care. He's ready to face it. Chris faces rejection every day of his life, constantly being abused by his father, his older brother, and profiled by the whole town of Castle Rock as a thief due to his family ties and an incident where he allegedly stole milk money. And throughout the film, he constantly tells Gordy that he'll go on to be a good writer while the other members in the group will just end up in being shop classes with the other dumb kids. And Gordy doesn't believe this, and he tries to discredit himself as a writer, but Chris does remind him that it is his dad's words, not his own, and that he should never let anyone tell him otherwise. And it isn't until that night where Chris admits to Gordy that he did in fact steal the milk money, but he did feel remorseful about it and he tried to give it back to a teacher who is implied to have stolen that money from Chris and used him as a scapegoat.
Just suppose that I told the story. Me, Chris Chambers, kid brother to Eyeball Chambers. Do you think that anyone would have believed it? Oh. And do you think that that bitch would have dared tried something like that if it'd been one of those douchebags from Up on the View if they had taken the money? No way. Hell no.
In many respects, Chris has brought a lot of the stigma on himself, and he doesn't deny that fact. But he does point out that he should be allowed to show that he's learned from his past mistakes and can prove himself as an upstanding citizen. And after seeing Gordy stand up against Ace, he really feels as if he can prove himself.
I'm never gonna get out of this town, am I, Gordy? You can do anything you want, man. Yeah.
Now, if I had any flaws with the film, it's the fact that, aside from Richard Dreyfuss narrating the movie as Gordy, who does a very good job, by the way, some of the adult performances are very underperformed in terms of the body language and their vocal expressions, especially Gordy's dad, who, if I'm being honest, I don't think he was really even trying. But aside from that, Stand By Me is one of the all-time greatest coming-of-age films due to the engaging and realistic portrayal of friendship, the subtle theme of facing or avoiding rejection, the very catchy and nostalgic 50s soundtrack, and due to some of the best child acting I've ever seen. I cannot believe I'm about to say this, but I couldn't think of a better rating. I'm going to give Stand By Me 5 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, check out my other reviews at noperfectmovie.com. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care.